Welcome back to Dynamics. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the State of the Union, both the speech from last night and the actual State of the Union. So how things are going currently and, where they could be going moving forward. I don't have set talking points, so hopefully it's not too rambly, but it might be a little bit of a long video. So we'll see where we are at the end of this. Um, Basically, our president, Joe Biden, gave his State of the Union address last night. I would like to say that, as I've stated in previous videos, I am not a Republican or a Democrat, but I am definitely not a fan of Joe Biden. I do consider him to be the worst or second worst president of my lifetime. And by second worst, technically speaking, Carter was the president for the first like year and a half of my life. So technically he counts. He's right up there. And but I don't remember it obviously because I was a baby. And so of the life that I remember, this is the worst period that we've had as far as presidents go. Far worse than even Obama and Clinton, who as a conservative libertarian, I'm not big fans of. This is definitely worse than that. I know that Democrats out there, and if you happen to be watching this video, thank you very much. I'm sure you would. Oh, many of you would say Trump was, and that's fine as well. I definitely see a lot of the negatives of the Trump presidency, so I get that. But for me, on a lot of different levels, and we'll kind of touch on them in this video, Biden is the worst president of my life. The man is oftentimes incoherent. Trump was unprofessional and would go off on tangents a lot, but he was almost never incoherent. Biden has some sort of issues, some sort of health and mental issues in the later stages of his life, which is sad to see. You don't want to see that happen to people, and you definitely don't want to see that happen to him on the national stage in front of the world. It's pretty sad. But yet they keep putting him out there. He hasn't stepped down yet, and so until they are willing to acknowledge the fact that he really should not be president anymore, this is something that we have to deal with. He doesn't make sense even when you understand the words that he's saying, they oftentimes don't make sense in the way that he's saying them. This happened at the speech many times. Sometimes the words, I don't know what word he was trying to say, and sometimes I definitely knew the words he was trying to say. They just didn't go together in a sentence that makes sense. So that happened multiple times. The man, I am going to say that sometimes he's lying, but more often than not, he just doesn't know what he's talking about, and he just says stuff that comes to his mind. He goes off script, he goes off his speeches, and he just rambles. And so oftentimes he says things that just aren't true, that he can't possibly enact or support or base anything on, and he just says them. So this is things that we, experienced last night with his speech. Making promises that he can't keep, saying that the government should do things that the government isn't allowed to do, and making up history that just didn't happen. If you're going to come in front of the people and say that the economy is doing great and it's way better than it was 2 years ago, you either are lying, you don't know what you're talking about, or you just can't. He doesn't know. His mental capacity is not there to understand. That inflation is out of control. That inflation, just because inflation is less this month than it was last month, doesn't mean that it's less than it was a year ago, which is what we're actually looking at. Doesn't mean that it's less than it was 2 years ago, which is the time frame he's trying to talk about. Gas prices are have not gone down from 2 years ago. You could maybe say they've gone down from 6 months ago. But right now they're on the rise again. He didn't mention that. He mentioned that they were cheaper than they were, however, whatever set, the max, the peak. They are cheaper than they were at the peak. But they're heading back there right now. I'm watching the gas prices on the corner every morning go up, right back to where they were. So to say that they're cheaper, even based on more recent time frames, they're not. They're going up. Gas prices are definitely not cheaper than they were 2 years ago. The price of eggs, the price of food, the price of gas, the price of cars, the price of everything is more expensive right now than it was. And while he does not get 100% blame for that, to deny that it's happening it's there's something wrong. Either he's lying or mentally deficient, and no one is correcting him, or he's going off script, even though they're trying to give him accurate talking points, which I highly doubt, but maybe it's happening. Um, the world is looking at this and they see weakness. I'm not a big fan of, going to war, but if you want to prevent going to war, you have to look strong. That's how you prevent going to war, is by looking strong. Um, Russia has shown that they looked stronger than they were because they have not been very successful in Ukraine. The United States has had that happen to them a few times also. So, it's not like you know, we're as strong as we, try to show ourselves to be. And it's probably how it is all around the world. China's probably the same thing, other than the pure numbers of it all. So Russia has appeared strong. So no one has wanted to go to war with Russia. Well, now Russia is showing their hand, showing that they are struggling in a war with Ukraine and do not appear as strong as they once did. Well, the U.S. does not appear strong at all. We do not appear like we could hold our own if we needed to. We do not appear like we have the leadership that could get us through that sort of thing. And while I hope that never happens, and I would never, want a president that wants that to happen, I also don't think that we're preventing it by him looking as weak as he does. Um, he comes out there and he talks about taking away certain types of guns. He comes out there and talks about taxing people at different rates, taxing people on different things, not just different rates. So saying that, income tax, okay, you have a progressive tax rate on income tax. No, what he's saying is, well, we just won't tax them on their income. We will tax them on their wealth, their assets. We will tax them on assets. If you tax someone on their assets for them to pay that tax, if they have no other source of revenue, no other source of income, for them to pay tax on assets, they have to liquidate the assets. I don't know, if you understand that. He obviously doesn't. But you see this with estate taxes oftentimes when people want people to have to pay taxes on things that they inherit through the estate, right? Well, if someone inherits a business in the estate, and that business is worth over the amount that you have to pay taxes on, then they have to liquidate at least part of that business to pay those taxes because they didn't get money to pay taxes. They got a business. And if they don't have the money to pay the taxes and the business doesn't have cash reserves, and they don't have, or at least enough to pay these huge taxes, then they're going to have to either sell the business, liquidate part of the business, reduce, shrink the business to be able to pay taxes because they inherited it, not because the business actually made this money, just because someone passed away and it was handed down and someone else had to pay the taxes on it. So similar to that, if you're going to tax a person on their assets, then they would have to liquidate those assets to be able to pay those taxes. Those things, it's questionable on whether they're constitutional or not to have to say that this person has to pay taxes this way on these things and this person doesn't have to pay taxes this way and on these things. Is that equal? That's there's some questions about that. Taking away any sort of semi-automatic weapon is a huge reach into the our right to bear arms. If you're saying, there wasn't a whole lot of pushback on taking away automatic weapons, and I get that. Although I disagree with it, I think there wasn't a lot of pushback on it, so they were successful, and they think that they should be successful in taking away other types of weapons, and they call them assault weapons or whatever they need to do to say that they should have the right to take them away. Okay, and so he's making these claims that just won't stand up in court, won't stand up when it goes to the Supreme Court, most likely. Interestingly, I had read somewhere or heard something that not all of the Supreme Court justices showed up. I'm curious. I'm going to look into that. I'm curious why they didn't show up. Do they feel like he was going to target them, causing them to be unsafe again? By talking about the issues of abortion, is he basically putting their lives in danger again? As it was when the leak came out about their ruling or their possible ruling, which did end up being pretty much accurate. That sort of thing. Is that why they weren't there? I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look into that. So basically, he comes out there. He makes promises he can't keep. He talks about how he's going to have all this infrastructure, and he's going to save Social Security, and he's going to save Medicare, and he's going to start all these new healthcare for all plans, and so all of this spending, right? And the only option that he has for paying for these things is taxing the wealthy, taxing millionaires and billionaires. Although he is only saying billionaires at this point, but that's funny because he obviously plans on taxing millionaires as well, and none of those things would be paid for by doing those additional taxes. Those additional taxes would pay for what we're already spending on, not new spending, because we go into deficits every year. So if you're doing a new tax, it won't even pay for one of those new spending programs, let alone all of them. He never explains how they will pay for any of them individually, let alone all of them, right? And so it's interesting because he's talking about the debt ceiling, and how he won't let Social Security and Medicare be a pawn in the debt ceiling debate. So to fix Social Security and Medicare, he wants to do new taxes, right? But never once mentions that, if you do new taxes, maybe you wouldn't have to raise the debt ceiling. No, he wants these new taxes to go to new spending, but he still wants new debt to pay for the old spending, right? Even though the new taxes wouldn't even pay for the old spending. So, so basically what he wants is just more debt. He doesn't offer solutions on how to pay for this debt. He just says he wants new debt. He wants more spending. Some of it will be offset by some new taxes that he seems to think he's going to be able to get implemented, which there's no way that he's going to get them passed. And if he was able to get them passed, they might not be constitutional. And if they were constitutional, they still wouldn't pay for all of the things that he says they will pay for. I don't know what else needs to be done to make it so that more people understand this, right? Because it was applause after applause after applause. Mind you, it was his party, and that's the next phase of this discussion. The political parties you know, like the Democrats like him because they're Democrats, and the Republicans don't like him because they're Republicans. And it's not really getting better; it's getting worse. Um, so, so the Republicans were, actually vocally disagreeing with him during his speech. They were shouting things at him and calling him a liar and booing and all this different stuff. The Democrats weren't just applauding his lines, they were cheering and whooping and hollering and, like saying like amen and all this different stuff when they agreed with him. Is this the direction that we want our government to go? Just to continue to go down this path of partisanship and unprofessionalism and, just constant bickering, where the only thing that matters is the political party, and you can act any way you want and you can treat other people any way you want, because it's spreading from politicians out to the everyday people. They treat people with disrespect who they think they disagree with. Um, they sometimes get violent because they think they disagree with people. And this is happening on both sides. The disrespect, the violence, it's becoming scary. We are seeing a country where there's no way back, to a point where we can agree on things, where we can agree to compromise to solve problems. We're getting there. We may already be there. There may be no way to fix everything. Um, and so that's where I think the State of the Union is. The State of the Union is, how do we fix these things if we can't even treat each other with respect and come to understandings and be able to understand things in the same way, because we aren't looking at things in the same way. We are completely different. We don't have the ability to resolve our issues um, it, within the confines of the Constitution anymore. There's a whole group of people that just want to just act like it's not even a aspect that they have to deal with. And whenever they run into the fact that no, it is something that you have to deal with, they get mad and they talk about assassinations. They go out there and, oh, maybe we'll just put down the Supreme Court justice I disagree with. Maybe we will, just add more Supreme Court justices to the court until we get the way that until we get what we want. And so there's no working within the confines of the Constitution. There's only, how do we get around the Constitution? What can we get away with as far as getting around the Constitution? That's the State of the Union. And if that's the State of the Union, then we have to think about how we move forward and away from each other. How do we divide the union? And I'm going to do a series of videos on that. That's kind of something that I'm really interested in, is how do we take the union and make it 2, 3, 4 different unions or countries or whatever you want to call them. How do we do that without war? Because that's the most important thing. Is if it's going to involve war, it won't happen. One side will win, one side will lose, and then the country will just continue on the way it is, either getting worse or getting better, depending on what side won or lost. But no one really wins that war, so we need to do it without a war. We need to do it as within the confines of the Constitution. How do we go moving forward, creating a multiple countries, or allowing portions of the country to leave? That's what the previous Civil War was fought over. Do we allow countries to leave? At this stage, I think we do, and I think we can, and there are ways to do that. And what happens once that happens, or how do we facilitate that? So that's the State of the Union that I see. I see a country that's just fractured beyond resolution, can't be brought back together. And we see that with the speech last night and with the just how decorum is going out the window and how we have a president who's up there who's incoherent and rambling and lying and doesn't know what he's talking about and wants to go around the Constitution and doesn't understand how to work within the confines of the Constitution, doesn't understand simple economics, doesn't understand, fixing this country with compromise and unity. He doesn't understand that. And he's been in the government for 40 years. Actually, I think he's probably been in close to 50 years last I looked. I know they always say 40 years, but it's actually been well over that now at this point. I think it was 40 years when he when he was running for president. Anyways, he's been in government a long time. He has been a big part of how the government has never gotten better. It just keeps getting worse. And now he's a man whose mental capacities are not fully there. And it's just getting worse. And he's quote unquote running things. So there's a lot of individual things that I could get into about the speech, but I just kind of wanted to talk about the generalities of it. I did not like the way that that the crowd, the Congress basically was acting, either side, and I just see it as the just a microcosm of what's going on in the rest of the country, and so hopefully we can get this resolved. But I see that we need to look at a path moving forward, and I will be doing some videos talking about that. Not that it matters what I think about it, just as like a thought exercise. Could it be done? I think it can. So let's talk about it. All right, everybody. If you have any questions, comments, leave them in the comments, and hopefully we can talk about this cordially. Because yes, you can have a cordial political discussion online. All right, everybody. Take care. Have a good day.